Rubber vine can threaten the viability of northern cattle properties, and once it gets a toehold, control is expensive and labour intensive. Scott and Jody Murray are facing the beginning of the fight to control the invasive weed that is already infesting 15% of the creek country of Uanda. The Murrays and Desert Channels Queensland, with funding from the Australian and Queensland governments, are, with other landholders in the Torrens Creek area, part of a control program aimed at tackling this weed in a coordinated way.
It's a 150,000 acre property. It used to be predominantly all sheep, and then in 1975 they went out of sheep because of the dog problem and moved into cattle. They had shorthorn cattle when they started, when they went out of sheep, and then slowly they moved into Brahman cattle. So we run about 3,500 breeders here on the property.
Jody Scott and her youngest daughter look after the cattle side of the operation. Crossbred Angus bulls have been introduced to the predominantly Brahman herd, and the family is experimenting with a new breed.
We introduced Speckled Park cattle to our herd. We've probably got 100 head all up between males and females. They've been good producers, the heifers, and then the bulls have been very fertile. We had them. We had a few calves hitting the ground before we expected, so that was a nice surprise.
Uanda uses wet season spelling to manage pastures.
We lock a paddock up, over the wet season and let it sort of grass up, yes, sort of during the wet times, yeah. And we're sort of getting into developing, like by putting a lot of legumes and stuff back into the pasture.
But it is the infestation of rubber vine that is the big management challenge in 2020.
I see mustering costs are more because you've got to use more helicopter in on the creeks to get the cattle out because of the rubber vines getting thicker and thicker, and the cattle are sort of, they know where all the hidey holes are and they're sort of going into the rubber vine infestations and sort of hiding. So yeah, you've got to spend more with helicopters and people on the ground to get cattle out of creeks.
Rubber vine is affecting native tree species in riparian areas.
It is actually strangling all the gum trees. It does eventually choke them out.
Scott Murray believes it is time to attempt to control the rubber vine on Uanda.
Working with Desert Channels to try and bring it under control by sort of some way of poisoning it or biological.
Rubber vine, it destroys our native vegetation, takes over watercourses and impacts on production. While the challenges are large, the funding provided is bringing technical experience to the landholders and dedicated teams who together manage this weed of national importance. And Scott Murray does not believe it will be an easy process.
You're not going to do it overnight, but I do think you can get it under control. Well, here at the moment we could get it under control pretty quickly by starting to do a plan and follow up each year on it. And I think we'd get it under control, yes.
Industry, government and Desert Channels Queensland support the grazing industry in managing for change and a sustainable future on the rangelands.